So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I want to thank Juliet for inviting me to this. I do apologize for all the technical difficulties. As technology gets more and more complicated, the possibilities of something going wrong only multiply. At any rate, I am a member of the Milwaukee County Board. I represent District 8. That includes South Milwaukee, Cudahy, St. Francis, and 2 wards of Bayview. There are 18 members of the Milwaukee County Board, and we all represent different parts of Milwaukee County and have, obviously we try to represent our own district, but at the same time we try to represent all of Milwaukee County because we all share common interests, or at least some common interests. So, what you're probably wondering, and what a lot of people wonder, is what Milwaukee County government does. The thing that I've realized is that a lot of people don't distinguish between the different tiers of government. You've got the federal government in Washington, D.C., you've got the state government in Madison, and here in Milwaukee County, there's Milwaukee County government, which is an arm of the state government, and then you have each city has its own municipal government. People call me alderman all the time. I have to correct them, no, I'm not alderman. And I don't have anything to do with having their garbage picked up or their streets plowed, even though people ask me to do that all the time. But I have to explain, no, I'm sorry, but I don't do that. So what does Milwaukee County government do, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. We cover all different kinds of activities and services. Our main ones are the airport, parks. We have 167 parks in Milwaukee County. Now there are city parks which are not under the county's purview. Back in the 1930s, the city of Milwaukee gave most of its parks to the county, which I'm sure the county thought was a great idea at the time. But now, the responsibility of paying for the upkeep, it's extremely difficult. We also have the transit system. Now, that's not just Milwaukee County buses, that's also paratransit for those who are physically challenged. We have all manner of youth and family services. We cooperate with all kinds of different entities, street angels who look out for the homeless. We also have public safety. That includes the sheriff's office, the jail, and the Community Reintegration Center, formerly known as the House of Correction. And that part of Milwaukee government is all mandated by the state. There's no way we cannot provide that. The parks are not mandated by the state. We're not obligated to have any parks at all. Thankfully, we haven't. 100 years ago, Dan Home and Charlie Whitnell, who were helping to run Milwaukee government, they had the foresight to build all kinds of beautiful parks, safe green spaces, which we still enjoy 100 years later. Now the sheriff's office is independent, it's elected separately from county government. It's not appointed by the county exec. And at the end of every fiscal year, they basically hand us a bill and we have to pay it because we're obligated to do so by the state. And it has been a huge drain on county resources in recent years because it's harder and harder and harder to recruit jail guards. They get paid about the same as somebody who works in a jail in one of the rural counties. And not surprisingly, working as a guard in Milwaukee County is a heck of a lot more stressful than, let's say, Fond du Lac County or even Washington County or Ozaukee County. And they get paid just as much as they would there as they do here, even though it's only a fraction of the amount of work and stress. So often guards get hired in Milwaukee County, work here for a while, and then they take a job in a county somewhere else in the state. They're getting paid just as much, but they don't have to do nearly as much work. And, obviously for their families, it's a lot less stress having to worry about, is something going to happen to them. So, because there's a shortage of guards, sheriff's deputies have to substitute for those guards. And they work overtime, and overtime is an increased expenditure for Milwaukee County, and this is just a cycle, because as more and more people have to work overtime, they're more likely to quit, or forced to work overtime, I should say, and go someplace else. So that has been extremely problematic for Milwaukee County in recent years. Also, we have all kinds of housing programs. Again, we work with the homeless, and we try to make sure, there's enough housing for everyone. There isn't. Almost all the new building in Milwaukee County over the last 30 years, excuse me, has either been very expensive condos or homes in the suburbs for the well-to-do. For the average person, and especially the poor, it's getting harder and harder to find decent housing. That's why we have homeless. That's why we have people living in our park and rides, living out of their car or in their campers. And again, it's a cycle. We have the courts. Again, this is mandated by the states. Whatever the courts spend, they give us a bill and we have to pay it no matter what, because it's mandated by the state. We have mental health services. Again, very, very, can be a very challenging activity. And when I first moved to Milwaukee 42 years ago, I was a student at Marquette, just walking from my apartment at Marquette down to Grand Avenue Mall. It was just running a gauntlet of people facing all manner of mental health challenges. It's better than that now, thankfully. And in large part, that's because of Milwaukee County mental health services, but people have mental health challenges of all sorts every day. Now, we also have aging disability services. We have 5 senior centers. One of them is in my district, Kelly Senior Center, and these are a lifeline for many of our seniors. It's a place where they come to eat lunch almost every weekday. They come to play cards. They indulge in crafts, whether knitting or painting, or they come there to exercise. We have a small gym at Kelly. Now, other senior centers, like Wilson Park Senior Center, is much, much bigger, much better equipped. And again, it can be challenging. Kelly Senior Center is basically 70-year-old military barracks left over from the Cold War era. They were never designed to be senior centers. And we're thinking about replacing them with new ones, but again, everything in the Milwaukee government comes down to this. And of course, we have the zoo. I first came to the zoo, Milwaukee County Zoo, 51 years ago. I stood as far away from Sampson as I am from this crowd right now. And I still remember it to this day. I know the Milwaukee County Zoo is very, very important to a lot of people. And, you know, it's a world quality zoo, but again, the financial challenges are massive. You know, we're opening a new rhinoceros exhibit. That one exhibit, just for that one species, is $9 million.
Oh.
And, you know, for the zoo to keep its national accreditation, that's what the exhibit's gonna cost. We built an elephant exhibit, also extremely expensive. It's very nice. But you know, back 100 years ago, all you needed was, you know, basically a cage for animals. That doesn't cut it anymore. To our great regret, we just lost our seal and sea lion exhibit. The seals and sea lions were sent to other zoos across the country, and that was a huge loss. It was decades old. It wasn't up to snuff anymore, and the cost of keeping it up was prohibitive, and that's all there is to it. So we were very, very sad to see that go, but again, it comes down to money. Now, one thing you need to know, always remember, is we are an arm of county government. Much of our funding comes from two sources. One is the property tax. The other is the state government. The people running the legislature in Madison don't like Milwaukee County. They run for office getting elected by talking about how much they don't like Milwaukee County, and they think that we're a bunch of parasites. Well, actually, the opposite is true, because Milwaukee is the economic engine of the state. More of our tax money goes to Madison than we get back. So, you know, and again, the state has to provide services for all the counties. And, you know, when you have a county, let's say way up north, northern Wisconsin, you know, there still need to be roads, there still need to be state troopers, and you know, the tax base is small, but somebody's got to pay it, and it ends up being us. So we have just basically in the last 35 years just taken a terrible, terrible loss in income from the state. Now, 35 years ago, Milwaukee County Parks was the showcase for the nation. People from all over the nation look to Milwaukee County Parks as an example. Now we employ 1/3 as many employees as we did then. If it weren't for the Milwaukee County Park Friends groups, our parks would be just deteriorating into semi-wild state. Just last weekend, I was in Pulaski Park digging up weeds. Not too glamorous, trust me. It's not why I ran for public office, is to dig up weeds, but hey, somebody's got to do it. And if the county can't afford to do it, then it falls to the Friends groups. So, let me move on here. Okay, there are 18 members of the Milwaukee County Board. I happen to be the first vice chair. That's what my pin, or my ID tag here says. This says I'm a Milwaukee County employee. This pin here, which I just got earlier this month, because I'm a Milwaukee County Board member, I took part in a symposium at Northwestern University on nuclear weapons, of all things. Now, don't worry, Milwaukee County doesn't have any nuclear weapons. But it was 4 years ago, I sponsored a resolution calling upon the federal government to pull back from spending trillions of dollars on a new generation of nuclear weapons, which the current president has vowed to do. So that's why I was invited to the symposium, and I was slightly, or more than slightly intimidated by my fellow members on the panel. You had the mayor of Nagasaki, Japan, and he's the one who gave me this peace dove as a peace offering from the people of Nagasaki to the United States. I'm a member, longtime member of Peace Action. That's how I met my wife at a Peace Action event. When I drove back and showed this to her and told her what it was, who gave it to me and what it was for, her jaw dropped about a foot. And I can understand why. I also had the president of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. You had an organizer from a Nobel Prize winning anti-nuclear group. So again, it's very heavy, and I can fairly say I represent Milwaukee County very well. At least that's what the people in the audience told. So anyway, 18 members of the board. I was going to show you the pictures here, but obviously I don't have them. But the chair of the Milwaukee County Board is Marcelia Nicholson. She represents some of the lower north side and part of downtown here. I'm the first vice chair, so when she doesn't, she's out of town or she's sick, and somebody else needs to step up and chair the meetings, that would be me. And just this Thursday, I chaired my very first Milwaukee County Board meeting. Second vice chair is Priscilla Cogs Jones, from one of Milwaukee's most famous political families. They've got so many members, or had so many members in Milwaukee County or city of Milwaukee government. I couldn't name all of them, but I'm sure she could. And we've got people representing, all of Milwaukee County, all the suburbs, and all the city of Milwaukee. Now, the chair of the Milwaukee County Board presides over county board meetings. She also assigns members to the various committees, which I will speak to in a moment. And that is extremely important because who's on what committee, it's, same as in Congress. People try and get on certain committees that are going to affect their district, and they may get on them, they may not. I was on the Parks Committee every single term until this present one. The chairwoman took me off and assigned me to another committee, and that's the way it goes. Whatever she says, she decides. Also, all the resolutions that come before the Milwaukee County Board, she decides which committee they go to. They can go to one committee, they can go to 2, 3 committees. The most important resolutions go to the Finance Committee because finance obviously covers expenditures, or at least big expenditures. And it's a much, much, much bigger time commitment. So in the fall, when we pass our annual budget, they meet all day, every day for a couple of weeks. And also, the county board chair does a lot of ceremonial duties. She appears with the county executive, mayor of Milwaukee, all manner of events. And Marcelia Nicholson's very good at that because, one, she has a great smile, nice personality, and is impeccably groomed. So. All right. I've been on the county board now a little over 7 years now. I was first elected in 2018. I ran. I was in a 3-way race. One of my opponents was backed by the then county executive, and I was outspent nearly 10-1. But I won. Wow. Because I used the county executive's money against my opponent. And it worked. So, currently, I am the chair of the Committee on Transportation and Transit, and as you probably guessed, that's the committee that controls the buses and the paratransit. We also have, there are some roads that the county takes responsibility for. very confusing because some roads are at the same time county roads, state roads, city roads, so you can see where the confusion lies. Okay, there are 10 county board committees where the heavy lifting of legislation happens. There's the audit committee. They're the ones who make sure all the money that has been set aside to go for a certain expense actually gets spent on that expense. It's not wasted and it doesn't just disappear. There's the economic community development. The county has grant money, sometimes gives grants to organizations which fight homelessness, do all kinds of various do-gooder activities. The most painful moment I've had in all my time on the Milwaukee County Board, I was at a meeting, I didn't host it, but a colleague of mine did. And it was about a homeless shelter in a residential neighborhood. The number of people who showed up to oppose this homeless shelter, and just the vehemence and nastiness. And street angels who work with the homeless, they were there in large number, and one person got up and said, "You do-gooders, put that homeless shelter in your neighborhood, not ours." I mean, this kind of venom, nastiness, it's just part of politics. It's not attractive, and I can understand why a large percentage of the population would never dream of running for public office. Because you invite, well, you don't invite, but you get hatred for almost any important decision you make. And, the two most contentious issues that we've voted on in all the time I've been on the board, one was about a gun show on Milwaukee County property, and of course the pro-gun types were sending me emails telling me they were going to vote me out of office. And then, but the most contentious issue we've ever voted on was about 2 years ago. It was a resolution on the war in Gaza, and it was a resolution calling for a ceasefire and condemning Israel's bombing in Gaza. And we just got emails, phone calls from all over the country. Obviously, the overwhelming majority of our contacts come from Milwaukee County, but sometimes not. We were getting calls and emails from all over the country. And, a lot of them were from people of Palestinian descent. A lot of them were people of the Jewish faith who have family in Israel. So their opinions were quite animated, to put it mildly. Okay, so Finance Committee, they are the most important committee because, as their name connotates, they approve the big money resolutions regardless of what they're spent on. And again, some resolutions go to more than one committee. We have the Health, Equity, Human Needs Strategic Planning Committee. That will handle things like homelessness and all kinds of mental health needs, so on and so forth. The Intergovernmental Relations Committee. That is probably, by board members, considered the least important committee, but the resolution on the war in Gaza went through the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. So a committee that usually doesn't get hardly any notice, at 1 month, the next month, it'll get incredible notice, as it did on that occasion. The resolution that I sponsored on nuclear weapons, that went through the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. The Judiciary, Law Enforcement, and General Services Committee, they look at our courts and the Sheriff's Office, the jail, the Community Reintegration Center. And again, that's a big part of our budget, and it's mandated by the state. The Parks Committee. I was on the Parks Committee, and again, we've got a lot of parks. They take a lot of upkeep, and you know, I get emails from constituents, well, a tree that's on county park land fell and now part of it's in my backyard. And we have to deal with those kind of issues. I was at a meeting of the city common council not long ago, and they had I was in a committee hearing in the audience, and they had 10 different people where a city tree fell on somebody's car. And during one of our big windstorms, which are only becoming more and more common, and their car was totaled because a tree fell on their car. Now, you don't think of that as something the government does on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes it does. The Personnel Committee, that's exactly what it sounds like. People who are getting county jobs, all different kinds of, whether they're working for the county exec or somewhere mid-level county government, they go through the Personnel Committee. And last but not least, there's my committee, Transportation and Transit, and we control the buses, or look after the buses, I should say, and paratransit. It's a lot of work, and things happen every day. Every time I turn on the news, and if I see a bus, a county bus, got into an accident, it hit a car, I go, oh no, we're gonna have to hear about that next committee meeting. But we also do have good news. When a bus driver rescues a small child that's walking down the middle of the street and pulls them away, then that makes my heart feel good. As I go, that driver's a Milwaukee County Transit employee. Okay. Now, each committee has its own chair and vice chair and committee members. Again, those are all picked by the chairperson of the board, which currently is Marcelia Nicholson. So, every 2 years, we reorganize. Every 2 years, we have to wait and see what committees we're going to be. And one can get taken off of one committee and put on another, with no notice. County board meetings, we meet roughly once every month. It's on a Thursday, and meetings can run anywhere from 2 hours to 12 hours. And I tell you, when they get towards the longer end of that scale, it's quite the trial. State legislatures and Congress, they do that too, just like us, and it's as annoying for them as it is for us, but it's part of our job. And it's often because either there's an emergency or somebody did something really stupid. So, now, in our county board meetings, we take all the resolutions that pass through committee, we vote on them as an entire board, and they're either adopted or rejected. Now, the overwhelming majority of them that come to the full board are adopted. They're only, I'd say, about 2% of all the resolutions that are passed through a committee that come to the full board are rejected. And it's usually because they're very controversial. Again, this last meeting we had, it was about 3 hours. We spent half the meeting on one resolution. We had 40 different resolutions, but we spent half the meeting on just one. Because everybody wants to talk, and everybody goes around and around, tries to disprove something somebody else said. And, you know, we try not to get nasty. There's only, I'd say, actually the county board now is very, very collegial. Way before my time, 20 years ago, county board used to get nasty. The oldest member of the Milwaukee County Board, or longest serving I should say, is Willie Johnson. He's been on the board since 2002, which is what, 23 years? And he voted against the pension scandal resolution, and basically he gets to dine out on that for the rest of his life. Because the overwhelming majority of the county board voted for that fiasco, and you know, we're paying for it to this day. I mean, literally, the county pays for that. So, and the first thing when the average person hears the Milwaukee County Board, first thing they think, the pensions. And it happened 15 years before I got on the board, but you know, I still hear about it all the time. The Milwaukee County budget, again, we pass a budget each November. It is about $1.5 billion. And again, that's covering everything I've mentioned so far. This is where it gets extremely complicated because again, some of the things the Milwaukee County Board does is mandated by the state government. Our sheriff's office, the jail, community reintegration center, our courts, we have to pay those no matter what. So we can't, you know, just say, well, we're not going to spend as much money on that this year. No, that's not how it works. Other things are not mandated. And again, first of those is parks. So when anything gets cut, inevitably the first thing that gets cut is parks. And parks has been cut and cut and cut over the last 85 years. Where now it's just a skeleton force, and if it weren't for our friends groups, again, our parks would be semi-wild. We get all kinds of grants from the federal government and the state government, and they have to be spent on certain things. And often in a certain period of time. We can't just, you know, say, well, we got money left over here, so we're going to take that money left over and spend it here where we need it. No, it doesn't work that way. We have to spend it on what that grant money is for. Yes, you had a question?
With the current regime in the federal government, will all the cuts they're doing affect Milwaukee County?
Definitely.
Could you repeat the questions for the people?
Sure. The question was, with the current federal government, that's the one in Washington, D.C., they're in the process of passing a budget. The House passed one, the Senate hasn't. The Senate will pass their own version, and then they will come together and reconcile the two different versions. And no matter what gets passed, it's not going to be good for the state and for Milwaukee County, and almost the city too, because all these entities of government depend on revenue from the federal government. We pay taxes, they go to Washington, D.C. You know, our government, or our budget is $1.5 billion for Milwaukee County. Theirs is trillions of dollars. And they, again, they grant all kinds of grant money to all different kinds of things. That's getting cut. That's exactly what Elon Musk's Doge group is setting out to cut. We don't know exactly what's going to get cut. I know some things will, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. And I can't speak to exactly what's going to get cut because I don't know yet. And even the people in Washington, they don't know yet. But it's not going to be pretty. And again, for whatever state of Wisconsin, they get cut, you can bet Milwaukee County is going to pay the price. Again, not only from the money that we directly get from the feds and we get fair amount of grant money from the bid. And what the state gets, we're gonna lose both ways. That's just a painful reality, About 80 million people didn't vote last fall. Why? I don't know. But I knocked on over 1,000 doors asking people to vote. A lot of people bragged that they weren't gonna vote. I don't think that's anything to brag about, because not voting isn't, they think it's an act of rebellion. No, it's not rebellion, it's surrender.
Yeah.
You've given up. So, Milwaukee County Board passes a budget. The county executive can decide whether to sign it or veto it. Inevitably, the county exec signs it, but you never know. Okay. Now, how am I doing on time? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we got a late start. Let me flash forward. Another thing, the Milwaukee County Board, like the federal government, the state government, every 10 years after the census, we get redistricted. The most painful thing that the Milwaukee County Board has done in all the time I've been on the board was redistricting, because population within Milwaukee County moves, more and more people are going to places like Oak Creek, Franklin, and so, they get more representation. There are some neighborhoods where people are leaving, and we had to move the boundaries accordingly, and nobody wants their boundaries moved. They want somebody else's boundaries moved. And I thought the map that we ended up approving was good. Still, 1/3 of the Milwaukee County Board turned over, and some really good people, lost their seats. So, because of it, either they decided, my good friend Jason Haas, he got put into my district. He didn't run again. John Weishon, who had been on the board for over 20 years, he ran. He got outspent 3-1 by his opponent, and he lost. So, and that's what happens during redistricting. I just want to say, contact your county supervisor, email them, call them. We do take those calls and emails seriously, especially, when they're on important subjects. Sometimes we get really, really silly contacts. I had one of my very first phone calls when I became a county supervisor was, somebody said her house was near the airport. She said airplanes were dropping manure on her roof. I wanted to say to her, are you sure these aren't Canada geese and not airplanes? Anyway, so, other things are quite serious. Any questions? Yes?
How do you contact the county park if you want to be a friend help?
Oh, well,
Are you sure you repeat?
the question was, if you want to be a friend in a friend group, I would think just about all parks have a friend group at this point. You can contact Milwaukee County Parks, go to Google and get their email, and they'll be happy to set you up with a friends group. And again, our friends groups do absolutely invaluable. Yes?
What motivated you to run for county supervisor?
Darn good question. I've been a political junkie since I was 12 years old. I've been a volunteer in all kinds of campaigns, and that's why I was asked to run, because I was known as a particularly good door knocker. And when you run in a race like this, you need to knock on people's doors. After I won, and again, it was one of the biggest upsets in Milwaukee County political history, people told me they voted for me because I knocked on their door and none of the other candidates did. The first time I was asked to run, I turned it down because I expected my mother to start dying at any moment. And 2 years later, it was a week after my mother's funeral, and they asked me again to run that time, And I did. And by the way, we run every 2 years. It used to be every 4 years, but the previous county executive, he went to Madison and lobbied to get it changed to 2 years to weaken the county board, because he detested the county board. And he's the person that finds my opponent. Yes.
What's the county's position on ICE?
Well, a very difficult one, as you may have guessed. Hannah Dugan, I think
Yeah.
Judge Hannah Dugan, you all know who she is. Her courtroom is 4 floors above my office. And, they came to her court with no warrant. I mean, it wasn't a valid warrant. It wasn't from a judge. And, she told them they can't come in. She told ICE, you cannot come in my courtroom. And so that was all the excuse they needed to arrest her, haul her away in handcuffs, and the head of the FBI posted her picture in handcuffs on his personal page. Everything coming out of the federal government right now is about fear. People are afraid, and it's not just people like us, it's even Republicans in Congress. They're afraid to stand up to Trump because either one, they know that some person even loonier than they are will run against them and knock them out in the primary, or they'll get death threats. A friend of mine who's on Oak Creek School Board, during COVID, she was getting death threats.
So the county doesn't have a stand on
Well,
ICE?
actually we do. We're not cooperating with ICE. But, the feds can pass some law saying, you gotta do this, this, and this. Or, we'll take away our money from you. Yes.
Thanks.
Regarding the Hannah Dugan issue, is it Milwaukee's clear policy that it has to be a warrant from a judge? It can't be an administrative warrant?
Correct.
Was that kind of the...
Administrative warrant isn't a real warrant. That's,
Okay.
a monopoly money. Any other questions? Yes,
Yeah, thanks for serving on the board.
you're welcome.
Several years ago, there was quite a reorganization of the board, and I know you guys got a real cut in salary.
Well,
Yeah,
in half, yes.
yeah, so I'm trying to think of the history of how.
That was before I got on board. but yes.
Okay, maybe.
And that's one of the reasons a lot of people won't run for the board, because I wear many hats, and one of them is, as a political activist, I ask people to run for the board. When they find out how much it pays, they won't run. They said, I can't afford that.
Well, I know the Alderman probably get twice as much. More.
No, Milwaukee Alderman gets paid 3 times as much.
3 times as much.
Matter of fact, 2 of my friends who served on the county board have
So
have
how did
left
that all come about when that happened? What was the empathy?
Again, the county executive was having trouble with the board, so he went to the Republicans in Madison and said, he had them pass a bill which took our terms from 4 years to 2 years and cut our pay in half. It used to be every member of the board had their own aide. Now it's 1 aide to 3 members. And it was to weaken the board, which it did, because, the turnover is much greater. And, again, it's somebody who doesn't believe in the democratic process. They just believe in authoritarianism. That's just the word I was looking for. Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. You've been an excellent audience. I again apologize for the